I should have known it wasn't just a game the moment Freddy said it with that smile. Not his usual easy, joking grin, but something sharper. Like he already knew how it would end, and I didn't. Relax, Chase, he said, leaning back on the couch like none of this mattered. It's just for fun. That's the thing about Freddy. Everything with him was always just for fun. Late night dares, stupid bets, pushing things a little further than they needed to go. That's how we'd always been, ever since freshman year when we got stuck as roommates, and somehow never stopped being around each other. He was the kind of guy people orbit around without even realizing it. Loud when he wanted to be, charming without trying, always the center of attention in a way that felt effortless. And me? I was just there. Quieter. Observing. Keeping things steady. But with Freddy, it never stayed steady for long. That night started normal enough. A few of his friends came over, drinks, music, the usual chaos. I wasn't even planning on joining them, I had stuff to do, but Freddy dragged me out of my room like he always did. Don't be boring, he said, tossing me a beer. You're playing. Playing what? I asked. He just smirked. You'll see. I should have walked away right then. Instead, I sat down. The game itself was stupid. Truth or dare, but with rules, according to Freddy. No backing out, no repeating dares, and whatever you picked, you had to commit. Everyone laughed it off like it was nothing, like it always was with him. At first, it really was nothing. Drink this. Text your ex. Do something embarrassing. The usual. Freddy kept things moving, controlling the pace without making it obvious. He always did that, guiding situations like he had an invisible hand on everything. And every now and then, I'd catch him glancing at me. Not casually. Like he was waiting. I told myself I was imagining it. I'd done that before, read too much into things, convinced myself there was something there when there wasn't. Because Freddy? He flirted with everyone. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't. Still, something felt different that night. Maybe it was the way he kept sitting closer than he needed to. His knee brushing mine, not moving away. The way his hand would linger on my shoulder a second too long when he laughed. Little things. Easy to ignore, if you wanted to. Then it was my turn. Chase, one of the guys, Marcus, I think, grinned at me. Truth or dare? I hesitated for a second. Not because I cared about the game, but because I could feel Freddy watching me. Dare, I said. Big mistake. Marcus looked way too pleased with that answer. All right. I dare you to let Freddy choose your next move. Whatever he says, you do it. A few people laughed. Someone muttered, "That's dangerous," under their breath. I forced a smirk. Seriously? Freddy didn't say anything right away. He just leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on mine. And smiled. Come on, Marcus pushed. You said you'd play? I exhaled slowly. Fine. Whatever. Freddy tilted his head, like he was considering his options. Taking his time. Dragging it out just enough to make my chest feel tight. You sure? He asked me quietly, almost too quiet for the others to notice. That should have been my out. I nodded anyway. Yeah. He held my gaze for a second longer, then leaned back again, casual like always. All right, he said. Simple. Nothing about the way he said it felt simple. I dare you, he continued, voice light, to sit on my lap for the next round. The room reacted instantly. Laughs, a few whistles, someone saying, Yo, that's wild. I didn't laugh. Because yeah, on the surface, it sounded like a joke. Something stupid. Harmless. But Freddy was still looking at me. Waiting. And suddenly, I was very aware of how close we already were. How easy it would be to just shift a little and... It's just a game, he added, quieter this time. Only for me. That's what got me. Not the dare. Not the crowd. Him. So I did it. I moved before I could overthink it, before I could talk myself out of it. Just turned slightly and lowered myself onto his lap like it didn't mean anything. Like it wasn't a big deal. The room erupted again, but it sounded distant. Muted. Because all I could focus on was him. The heat of his hands instantly settling on my waist. The way he adjusted slightly beneath me. The fact that he didn't move them away. "See?" he murmured near my ear. "Easy." My heart was pounding way harder than it should have been for something so stupid. I told myself to relax. To treat it like everyone else was, as a joke. But then his fingers tightened just slightly against my side. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for me to feel it. And that's when it hit me. For him, maybe it was just a game. But for me? It really wasn't. I stayed there longer than I should have. That was the first mistake. At first, I told myself it was just about not making it awkward. Everyone was watching, laughing, waiting for the next round like nothing about this was unusual. Like guys sitting on each other was just another stupid dare. But nobody else felt what I felt. Freddie's hands didn't move. They stayed on my waist, steady, firm, not gripping hard, but not light either. Just there. Like they belonged there. "All right, next," Marcus said, spinning the bottle again. I barely registered who it landed on. All I could think about was how aware I was of every small movement behind me. The way Freddie shifted slightly whenever he laughed. The warmth of his chest against my back. The fact that he didn't even try to make space between us. If anything, he leaned in more. "You good?" he murmured under his breath. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah." Lie. I wasn't good. Not even close. Because my brain kept trying to convince me this didn't mean anything, that it was just Freddie being Freddie. Pushing boundaries, getting reactions, playing the room. But my body wasn't listening. And that made it worse. The round dragged on, but it felt like time slowed down. Every second stretched out, thick and heavy. I tried to focus on the conversation, on anything that wasn't the way his thumb absent-mindedly brushed against my side once, then again. Subtle. Like he was testing something. No one else reacted. So maybe I imagined it. I almost believed that, until his fingers pressed in just a little more when someone made a joke about us. "Damn, Chase, you look comfortable," one of the guys laughed. I forced a grin. "Yeah, man. Living my best life." Freddie huffed softly behind me, like he found that funny. But his grip didn't loosen. If anything, it tightened. That's when I realized something that made my chest feel tight in a completely different way. He knew. He knew I wasn't taking this like a joke. And he was still doing it. The round finally ended, and I started to shift off his lap, already telling myself that was it. Done. Back to normal. But his hands slid slightly higher on my side. Not enough to stop me. Enough to make me pause. Just for a second. "Next round," he said casually, like nothing happened. I moved off him anyway. I had to. The second I stood up, it felt like I could breathe again, but also like something was missing. Which pissed me off more than anything else. I grabbed my drink, taking a longer sip than I needed. "Your turn, Freddie," Marcus called out. Freddie leaned back like he owned the room again, like the last 5 minutes hadn't meant anything. "Truth," he said. "Of course he did." Marcus grinned. "All right, have you ever done anything with a guy?" The room went quieter than before. Not dead silent, but enough. Enough that I felt it. I didn't look at Freddie right away. I didn't want to. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like a game anymore. Freddie didn't answer immediately. He just rolled his drink between his hands, like he was thinking about it. Then he shrugged. "Depends what you mean by done something." A few laughs. Someone said, "That's not an answer." "It is," Freddie shot back, smirking slightly. "You just don't like it." "All right, fine," Marcus said. "Have you kissed a guy?" And that's when Freddie finally looked at me. Not quickly. Not accidentally. Directly. "Yeah," he said. My stomach dropped. Someone let out a loud, "No way!" and the room picked back up again. Voices overlapping, questions flying. But I barely heard any of it. Because Freddie didn't look away. Not from me. "Who?" someone asked. Freddie shrugged again, like it didn't matter. "Does it matter?" "Yeah, it matters," Marcus pushed. "Was it serious or just drunk shit?" Freddie's eyes flicked down for a second, then back up to mine. "Just a game," he said. The words hit harder than they should have. Because that's exactly what he told me earlier. Just a game. The room accepted that answer way too easily. People moved on, the energy shifting back into something lighter, less focused. But I couldn't. Because now my head was stuck on one thing. Was he telling the truth? Or was he doing the same thing he always did, hiding something real behind a joke? I set my drink down harder than I meant to. Freddie noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. "Chase," someone called. "You're up again." I barely reacted. Truth or dare? I should have said truth. I should have ended it right there. But instead I heard myself say, "Dare." And across from me, Freddie smiled again. Not wide. Not obvious. Just enough to tell me this wasn't over. Not even close. I don't know why I said dare again. Actually, that's not true. I knew exactly why. Because part of me wanted to see how far Freddie would take it. And that part was louder than the one telling me to stop. "Damn, Chase," Marcus laughed. "You never learn, huh? Just pick something," I muttered, trying to sound unbothered. But I didn't look at Marcus. I looked at Freddie. And he was already looking at me. That same look from before, focused, unreadable, like he was trying to decide something. "All right," Marcus said, dragging it out. "Let's make this interesting." He glanced between us, clearly catching on to the tension everyone else was pretending not to see. "I dare you," he said slowly, "to let Freddie give you a dare." Again. A few people groaned. Someone said, "Nah, that's too easy." But Marcus just grinned. "No, it's not." Because now it wasn't random anymore. Now it was intentional. Now it was just us. My chest tightened. Freddie leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees again. That same position as before. That same controlled energy. "You good with that?" he asked me. There it was again. That out. And again. I ignored it. "Yeah," I said. Quiet, but clear. For a second, either of us moved. The noise around us faded into the background again, like everything narrowed down to just that space between us. Then Freddie exhaled softly, almost like he made up his mind. "All right," he said. Simple. Too simple. "I dare you." He paused, eyes flicking down to my mouth for the briefest second before coming back up. "To stay in my room with me for 10 minutes. The reaction this time wasn't as loud. More confused than anything. "That's it," someone said. "That's your big dare?" Freddie shrugged. "Yeah." Marcus frowned slightly, like he expected more, but didn't push it. 10 minutes, he repeated. Door closed. That part landed. A few oaths followed, teasing but curious. I felt my stomach twist. Because unlike the last dare, this one didn't have an audience. No buffer. No pretending it was just for show. This was different. "Scared?" Freddie murmured, just loud enough for me. I scoffed, even though my pulse was already too fast. "Of you? Please!" He smirked slightly, standing up. "Then come on." And just like that, it was happening. I followed him before I could think about it too much, aware of the way everyone watched us get up. The way the energy shifted again, less loud now, more expectant. Freddie didn't look back as he walked down the hallway. I did. Just once. Marcus was watching us like he was trying to figure something out. Then I turned back and kept going. Freddie's room was at the end of the hall. I'd been in there 100 times before. Nothing about it was new, same messy desk, same unmade bed, same dim lamp in the corner. But when he stepped inside and turned to look at me, it felt completely different. I walked in slower this time. The door clicked shut behind me. And just like that, the noise from the party disappeared. Too quiet. For a second, neither of us spoke. Freddie leaned back against the door, arms crossed loosely, like he was giving me space, but also blocking the only exit. Not aggressively. Just there. So, he said, voice calmer now. Lower. 10 minutes. I nodded, even though my throat felt dry. Yeah. Silence stretched between us again. I shoved my hands into my pockets, trying to ground myself. This is your big dare? Freddie tilted his head slightly. You wanted something more? There was a challenge in that. I exhaled, shaking my head. No, this feels kind of pointless. It's not, he said. Too quick. I frowned slightly. Then what is it? Freddie didn't answer right away. Instead, he pushed himself off the door and took a step closer. Not enough to be in my space. Enough that I noticed. You really think that was just a game out there? He asked. My chest tightened again. I shrugged, forcing a casual tone. Wasn't it? He watched me for a second, like he was trying to decide how honest to be. That depends, he said slowly. On what? On you. That didn't help. What does that even mean? I asked, a little sharper than I intended. Freddie didn't react to the tone. If anything, his expression softened slightly, less teasing now, more serious. It means, he said, taking another small step closer, I don't do things I don't want to do. My pulse kicked up. Okay. So if I touch you, he continued, voice steady, or get close to you, or pick you out of everyone in that room. He stopped just in front of me now. Close enough that I could feel the heat coming off him again. It's not random. My breath caught. Freddie. You think I didn't notice? He cut in quietly. The way you froze when you sat on my lap. The way you didn't move away. I swallowed hard. That was just... Don't, he said, not harsh but firm. Don't pretend it didn't feel like something. The room felt smaller. Too small. Because he was right. And I hated that he was right. It's a game to everyone else. He added, softer now. It doesn't have to be for you. That same sentence. Twisted. Different now. I shook my head slightly, trying to clear it. You said it was just a game. I said that out there, he replied. A beat. This isn't out there. That landed. Hard. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. So what is this then? I asked, quieter now. Freddie held my gaze. Didn't look away. Honestly? He said. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I actually wanted it. He exhaled slowly. This is me giving you a chance to stop pretending. Everything in me went still. Because suddenly, this wasn't about a dare anymore. Not even close. And for the first time that night, I didn't know what move came next. I should have said something. Anything. A joke. A deflection. A way to pull us back to something safe, something normal. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at him, my brain trying to catch up with what he just said. Stop pretending, I repeated quietly. Freddie nodded once, watching me carefully. Not cocky this time. Not teasing. Serious. You think I don't see it? He asked. The way you look at me sometimes, then act like you didn't. My chest tightened. That's not. It is, he cut in, softer now. And I'm not saying it to mess with you. That part hit differently. Because if this wasn't a game to him, then what was it? You do this a lot, you know, I said, trying to regain some control. Push people, get reactions, then act like it doesn't mean anything. Freddie didn't deny it. Yeah, he said. I do. That caught me off guard. But not with you. Silence. Thick. heavy. I searched his face for any sign of a joke, any hint that he was about to laugh and brush this off. There was none. You don't get to say that after tonight, I said, my voice lower now. After all that out there. I know, he replied. Another step closer. Now there was barely any space between us. I shouldn't have done it like that, he admitted. Not in front of everyone. Then why did you? He hesitated. And for the first time since I'd known him, Freddie looked unsure. I didn't think you'd stay, he said finally. That threw me. What? When you sat on my lap, he clarified, quieter now. I thought you'd laugh it off. Move. Make it a joke. I didn't respond. Because he wasn't wrong. I should have done that. But you didn't, he continued. And after that, I couldn't just pretend I didn't feel it too. My pulse spiked again. Feel what? Freddie let out a slow breath, like he was choosing his words carefully. This, he said simply. And before I could overthink it, his hand came up, not grabbing, not pulling, just resting lightly against my side again. Same place as before. But this time, there was no one else around to explain it away. My breath caught. Freddie, you can tell me to stop, he said immediately. No hesitation. No pressure. But his hand didn't move. And you will? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. I studied him for a second, trying to figure out if this was another one of his moments. Another push. Another test. But it didn't feel like that. It felt real. Which somehow made it worse. Because now the choice was mine. And I didn't know what that said about me. You said it was just a game, I muttered again, quieter now. Freddie's expression softened. I said that so you wouldn't freak out, he admitted. So I wouldn't either. That landed harder than anything else. Because it meant he wasn't as in control as he usually was. Not this time. Chase, he said, a little more careful now. If this is nothing to you, then yeah, fine. It was just a game. We walk out there, laugh it off, and that's it. My chest tightened at that. Because for a second, I imagined it. Walking back out. Sitting down like nothing happened. Letting this disappear. Pretending I didn't feel any of it. And something about that felt worse than staying here. But if it's not, he continued, his voice dropping slightly, then don't lie about it. The room felt too quiet again. Too small. Because he wasn't asking for much. Not really. Just honesty. And that scared me more than anything he'd done all night. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. You don't make this easy, I said. Freddie huffed a quiet laugh. Wasn't trying to. I looked at him again. Really looked this time. At the way he was holding himself back, just enough. At the way his hand hadn't moved, but hadn't tightened either. Waiting. For me. And that's when it clicked. This whole time, he'd been pushing. But right now, he wasn't. Right now, he was giving me the choice. And I was still the one hesitating. Yeah, I said quietly. It's not just a game. The words felt heavier than they should have. But also, right. Freddie didn't react right away. Just held my gaze. Like he needed to be sure. Then, slowly, his fingers pressed slightly more firmly against my side. Not enough to overwhelm. Just enough to acknowledge what I'd said. Okay, he murmured. That was it. No big reaction. No joke. Just, okay. And somehow, that made everything feel even more real. I swallowed hard. So what now? Freddie's lips twitched slightly, not quite a smile. Now? He repeated. He shifted just a little closer, close enough that I could feel his breath this time. Now we stop pretending, he said. My heart was pounding again. Louder. Faster. And this time, I didn't try to ignore it. For a second, either of us moved. That was the strange part. After everything that had just been said, After all that tension, all that build-up, you'd think something obvious would happen. That one of us would just close the distance completely, make it clear, make it simple. But it didn't feel simple. It felt heavy. Real. And that made every tiny movement matter more than it should have. Freddie's hand was still on my side, steady now, like he wasn't second-guessing it anymore. I was. Say something, he murmured. There wasn't any pressure in his voice, but there was something else there. Something quieter. Uncertainty. That surprised me more than anything else tonight. You're really serious about this? I said. It wasn't a question. Freddie let out a small breath through his nose, like I'd finally caught up. Yeah, he said. I am. I searched his face again, still half expecting him to crack, to grin, to brush it off, to say he was just messing around like always. He didn't. You've never. I hesitated, trying to piece it together. I mean, you said you kissed a guy, but you made it sound like nothing. Freddie's jaw tightened slightly. Because it was nothing, he said. Or I told myself it was. That landed somewhere deep. And this? I asked quietly. His fingers shifted just slightly against my side again, not moving away, just grounding. This isn't nothing, he said. Silence stretched again, but it felt different now. Less tense. More honest. And that made it harder to hide behind anything. I let out a slow breath, glancing away for a second before looking back at him. You're really bad at timing, you know that? I muttered. Freddie huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah, I've been told. Like you picked tonight? In the middle of a party? With everyone watching? I told you, he said, a little more serious again. I didn't plan it like that. I raised an eyebrow. You just accidentally dared me to sit on your lap? His lips twitched. Okay, maybe not completely accidental. Despite everything, I let out a short laugh. It broke the tension just enough. Freddie's shoulders relaxed slightly when I did. And for the first time since we walked into this room, it didn't feel like we were balancing on the edge of something about to snap. It felt like we were figuring it out. You could have just talked to me, I said. Freddie looked at me like I'd said something obvious and stupid at the same time. Yeah, he said. Because I'm great at that. I smirked faintly. Fair point. You ever think about it? He asked. The question was quieter than everything else he'd said tonight. But it hit harder. I knew what he meant. I hesitated. Which was answer enough. Freddie's gaze dropped for a second, then came back up. About me? He added. There it was. No way around it now. I could have lied. Probably should have. Instead, I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I admitted. Freddie didn't react right away. But I felt it. The subtle shift in his posture. The way his hand pressed just slightly more firmly again, like he needed something to anchor him. How long? He asked. I shook my head, letting out a quiet, almost embarrassed laugh. Does it matter? Yeah, he said. I glanced away again, jaw tightening. Long enough to know it was a bad idea. That wasn't the answer he wanted. I could tell. Why? He asked. I looked back at him, meeting his eyes directly this time. Because you don't do things halfway, I said. And I didn't want to be just another thing you tried out for fun. That landed hard. Freddie's expression shifted, something like frustration, but not at me. At myself. Maybe. I get why you'd think that, he said quietly. Yeah? Yeah, he nodded. Because that's how I've acted. I didn't argue with that. He stepped a little closer again, closing what little space was left between us. But not with you, he added. I let out a small breath. You already said that. I know, he said. I'm saying it again because I mean it. There was something different in his voice now. Less guarded. More certain. And if I mess this up, he continued, that's on me. Not because it was a game. My chest tightened again. You don't sound like someone who's unsure anymore, I said. I'm not, he replied. A beat. I was. Before tonight. And now? Freddie held my gaze. Now I know you feel it too. That did it. Whatever distance I'd been trying to keep, whatever hesitation was left, it cracked right there. Because he wasn't guessing anymore. And neither was I. The silence came back again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged. Freddie's hand shifted slightly, sliding just a little higher along my side, not rushing, not pushing, just testing. Waiting. Same as before. Only now, I wasn't frozen. I didn't pull away. I stepped closer. Just enough. And I felt the moment it registered. The way his breath caught slightly. The way his hand stilled for half a second before settling again. Still just a game? He murmured. I shook my head, quieter now. No. And that was the moment everything changed. Not because something big happened, but because neither of us pretended anymore. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't some dramatic moment where everything just snapped into place. It was smaller than that. Quieter. But somehow, heavier. Freddie didn't move right away after I stepped closer. For once, he wasn't rushing anything, wasn't pushing to see how far he could take it. He was waiting. Still giving me the space to change my mind. And I didn't. My hand came up before I could overthink it, resting lightly against his chest. Not bold. Not confident. Just there. Testing. The same way he had been with me all night. I felt his breath shift. Chase, he said quietly, like he wasn't sure if saying my name would break whatever this was. I know. I cut in, just as quiet. I didn't even know what I meant by that. Just that I understood this wasn't something you could take back once you crossed it. Freddie nodded slightly, like that was enough. Then, slowly, carefully, like he was giving me every chance to pull away, he leaned in. And I didn't. The space between us disappeared in a way that felt almost unreal. Not rushed, not messy, not like the kind of reckless thing I expected from him. It was steady. Intentional. And yeah, it hit harder than anything that happened out there. Because this time, there was no audience. No game. Just us. For a second, everything else faded. The noise from the other room, the thoughts in my head, the reasons I'd spent months ignoring this. All of it just quieted. And when we finally pulled back, it wasn't far. Freddie stayed close, forehead almost touching mine, like neither of us was ready to fully step away yet. Still think it's a bad idea? He murmured. I let out a small breath, half a laugh, half something else. Yeah, I said honestly. He huffed softly. Good. I frowned slightly. Good? Means you're actually thinking about it, he said. Not just going along with whatever I do. That was surprisingly fair. I shook my head a little. You really don't miss, do you? Freddie smirked faintly. Not when it matters. There was a pause. Then I looked at him properly again. Is this gonna be one of those things you pretend didn't happen tomorrow? I asked. That question sat heavier than anything else. Because that's what I was actually worried about. Not the moment. What came after? Freddie's expression shifted again, more serious now. No, he said. No hesitation. No joke. Just no. You sure? I pressed. Yeah, he nodded. I'm done pretending, remember? I held his gaze for a second, searching for any sign he'd backtrack. He didn't. And for the first time that night, I believed him. Okay, I said quietly. Freddie exhaled like he'd been holding that in longer than he wanted to admit. Okay, he echoed. Another small silence settled in, but it felt different now. Less tense. More grounded. Real. Then, from outside, someone banged on the wall. Yo! Your 10 minutes are definitely up. We both froze for half a second. And then, almost at the same time, we laughed. It broke the intensity just enough to bring us back. Freddie leaned back slightly, running a hand through his hair. Guess we can't hide in here forever. I nodded, even though part of me kinda wanted to. Yeah. Neither of us moved right away. Which said a lot. Hey, he said after a second. I looked at him. We don't have to go back out there and act like everything's normal. I raised an eyebrow. It's definitely not normal. He smirked. Yeah, but I mean, we don't have to explain anything either. That made sense. This wasn't anyone else's business. Yeah, I said. I'm good with that. Freddie nodded, like he expected that answer. Then he stepped back toward the door, but paused before opening it. Glancing at me one more time. You good? He asked again. This time, I actually thought about it. Everything that had just happened. Everything that could happen next. It wasn't simple. It probably wasn't easy either. But, yeah, I said. And this time, it wasn't a lie. Freddie gave a small nod, like that was enough. Then he opened the door. The noise from the party rushed back and instantly, loud, chaotic, normal. But nothing about this felt normal anymore. And as we stepped back into it, I realized something I probably should have figured out way earlier. For him, it might have started as a game. But for me, it never was. And now, it definitely wasn't going to end like one either. Going back out there felt weird. Not because anything obvious had changed, but because everything had. The same people were still sitting around, the same music playing, the same half-empty bottles scattered across the table. Marcus looked up the second we walked in, like he'd been waiting. Well? He grinned. Y'all alive in there? Freddie didn't miss a beat. Barely, he said, dropping back onto the couch like nothing happened. A few laughs. Someone threw a pillow at him. Normal. Too normal. I hovered for half a second before sitting down again, this time next to him, not on him. That alone should have been enough to settle things. But it didn't. Because now I was hyper-aware of everything. The space between us. The way his arm rested along the back of the couch, close enough that if I leaned back, it'd be around me. The fact that neither of us acknowledged it. Your turn, Chase, Marcus said, spinning the bottle again. I barely looked at it. Truth, I said immediately. I wasn't doing that again. Not tonight. Marcus smirked like he noticed the shift. All right, boring, but fine. He leaned back, thinking. What happened in there? Of course. A couple of guys leaned in, suddenly interested again. I shrugged, keeping my voice steady. Nothing. We just talked. Technically true. Freddie didn't say anything. Didn't look at me either. But I felt it, that subtle awareness again, like he was tracking every word I said. Lame, Marcus said, though he didn't sound convinced. 10 minutes for talking? Yeah, I replied, grabbing my drink. You want a full transcript or? That got a few laughs. Enough to move things along. But Marcus wasn't stupid. His eyes flicked between us once before he dropped it. The game kept going. And for a while, things actually did feel normal again. I answered a couple more questions. Someone else got dared to do something ridiculous. The energy picked back up, drifting away from us. But underneath it, there was still something there. Every now and then, Freddie's arm would shift slightly behind me. Not touching, not obvious, just close. Too close to ignore. And once, just once, when I leaned back without thinking, my shoulder brushed against his chest. Neither of us moved right away. It lasted maybe a second. But it felt longer. Way longer. Then I straightened again, clearing my throat like nothing happened. No one else noticed. Freddie didn't comment. But I could feel it building again. That same tension. Just quieter now. More controlled. By the time people started leaving, it was late enough that everything had slowed down. Conversations turned softer, more scattered. Someone passed out on the other couch. Marcus was one of the last to head out. He paused near the door, glancing back at us. You too good? He asked. Freddie nodded easily. Yeah. I echoed it a second later. Yeah. Marcus held the look for a second longer than necessary. Then shrugged. All right. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Freddie smirked. That doesn't narrow it down at all. Marcus laughed and left. And just like that, it was quiet again. Not the same quiet as in Freddie's room. This one felt heavier. Because now there was no distraction left. No buffer. Just us. Freddie stood up first, stretching slightly. I'll grab some water, he said. I nodded, watching him disappear into the kitchen. For a second, I just sat there, staring at nothing. Trying to process everything. Trying, and failing, to make it feel less real than it actually was. It didn't work. Because the second he came back, it all hit again. Freddie handed me a bottle, then sat back down next to me. Closer than before. Not accidental. You've been quiet, he said. I twisted the cap open, shrugging slightly. Just thinking. Dangerous, he muttered. I huffed a small laugh. Yeah, apparently. You regret it? He asked. Straight to the point. I looked at him. Really looked. No, I said. And that surprised me. Because I expected to hesitate. To overthink. But I didn't. Freddie nodded slowly, like he was taking that in. Good, he said. Do you? I asked. He shook his head immediately. No. No hesitation. No doubt. And something about that made my chest feel tight again, but not in a bad way. More like real. What now? I asked. It was the same question as before. But it meant something different now. Freddie leaned back slightly, looking at the ceiling for a second before answering. I don't know, he admitted. That was new. Freddie not having a plan? Thought you had this all figured out, I said. He smirked faintly. I had tonight figured out. And after? He glanced at me. That depends on you. There it was again. That shift. Not controlling. Not pushing. Just honest. I exhaled slowly, leaning back into the couch. Into his arm. This time, I didn't pull away. Freddie went still for a second. Then his arm settled more naturally around me. Not tight. Not possessive. Just there. And somehow, that felt bigger than anything else that had happened. I don't want this to turn into something weird, I said quietly. It already is, he replied. I rolled my eyes slightly. You know what I mean? He nodded. Yeah, he said. Me either. We can figure it out, he added. Doesn't have to be all at once. That sounded reasonable. Which was not what I expected from him. I glanced at him again. You're different tonight. Freddie huffed softly. Yeah. Don't get used to it. I smirked faintly. Too late. He shook his head, but didn't argue. And then, we just sat there. Not talking. Not overthinking. Just existing in it. And for the first time since this started, it didn't feel like something that was about to fall apart. It felt like something that might actually go somewhere. Even if either of us knew where yet. I woke up before him. That alone felt strange. Freddie was usually the first one up, always moving, always doing something. Even after late nights, he'd be the one making noise in the kitchen while everyone else tried to recover. But this time, he was still asleep. And I was lying there, staring at the ceiling, very aware of two things. 1, my head was clearer than I expected. And 2, his arm was still around me. Sometime during the night, we'd both shifted. What started as sitting on the couch turned into this. Half lying, half curled into the corner, like neither of us wanted to fully move away. I didn't remember exactly when it happened. Just that neither of us stopped it. Freddie's breathing was slow, steady against my shoulder. His hand rested loosely at my side, not gripping, not holding on too tight. Just there, consistent. And that was new. For a minute I didn't move. Didn't overthink. Just let myself sit in it. Because for once, it didn't feel confusing. It felt simple. Then he shifted slightly behind me, a quiet exhale leaving him as he started to wake up. Chase? His voice was rough, half asleep. Yeah, I said. A small pause. Then, you've been awake long? Not really. He hummed softly, like that was enough information. Neither of us moved right away. Which should have been awkward. But it wasn't. It felt natural. Eventually, Freddie loosened his arms slightly, giving me space to sit up if I wanted to. I didn't. Instead, I turned my head just enough to look at him. His hair was a mess, his expression still soft from sleep, nothing like the confident, always in control version of him from last night. Morning, I said. He blinked once, then smirked faintly. Morning. You still good? He asked. Same question. Different meaning now. I thought about it for a second. About everything that happened. About how I expected to wake up feeling weird, or unsure, or like I'd crossed some line I couldn't come back from. But I didn't. Yeah, I said. And again. It wasn't a lie. Freddie studied my face for a second, like he was checking for something I wasn't saying. Then he nodded. Good, he said quietly. I hesitated for a moment. Then asked the thing that actually mattered. What about you? He didn't look away. Yeah, he said. Still good. No hesitation. No backtracking. And that settled something in me. I exhaled slowly, leaning back slightly into the couch. Last night was kind of insane, I admitted. Freddie huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah. That's one way to put it. I mean it, I said, glancing at him. You don't usually do things like that. Like what? Actually means something, I said. He winced slightly. Damn. Okay. I smirked faintly. You know what I mean? Yeah, he said after a second. I do. I meant it, he added. Simple. Direct. I nodded slowly. I know. And I did. That was the difference. Not just what happened, but how it felt after. No pretending. No pretending it didn't matter. We sat there for a while longer, talking in pieces. Nothing heavy. Nothing overwhelming. Just figuring it out as we went. What this meant. What it didn't. What we were willing to try. No labels. No pressure. Just honesty. At some point, Freddie stood up, stretching again like he always did. Coffee? He asked. I raised an eyebrow. You're making it? Don't get used to it. He shot back. I smiled anyway. Yeah. I'm in. He disappeared into the kitchen, and I stayed on the couch for a second longer, letting everything settle. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some clean, easy answer. But it was real. And that was enough. When I finally got up to join him, Freddie glanced over his shoulder, that same familiar smirk creeping back, but softer now. Different. Don't overthink it, he said. I leaned against the counter, watching him. Too late. He huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah, figured. A small pause. Then I said it. Hey. Freddie? Yeah? I held his gaze. Next time, I said, don't call it a game. Something in his expression shifted again. Subtle. But real. Yeah, he said. I won't. And just like that. It wasn't one anymore.